Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Toni Reavis, a longtime announcer here at the Falmouth Road Race, and delighted to be joined by somebody I've been covering for many, many years. And you guys, I know, delighted to see. Let's welcome the 2018 Boston Marathon champion, Des Linden, here to the Falmouth Road Race. So a couple of San Diegans up here on the thing. Des was born in Chula Vista, California. Went as a hilltopper at Chula Vista High School, then on to Arizona State, and then on to Michigan for her professional career. And you're still in Michigan, running for Brooks. So how do you like this? How do you like this, just being the Boston Marathon champion and getting all these lines and pictures and autographs?
It's good to hear it, because sometimes I still don't believe it. So when you do the intro, I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't go away. This is for real. And you guys are sitting there and you seem for real, so it's pretty exciting, but it's still something I have to pinch myself about. Like, wow, that happened.
Now, when did you know it was? I was doing the commentating on the race for WBC television in Boston, and it was, of course, in the 122 years of the Boston Marathon, perhaps the on one end of the pole, the 1976 race was the Run for the Hoses, where it was 100 degrees during the race. And it was very, very dangerous. Well, that was the worst heat year, I think, in the history of the race. But I think it's hard to have the worst day in the history of a 122-year event. But I think we had the worst in the Patriots' Day this year. He ran 76 and this year. Worst this year, he said. He ran in 76 when it was 100 degrees at Jack Fultz won. But tell me, the thing is, your story was not that you didn't think you're going to have a good day. You thought you're going to have a horrible day. When did the pivot happen? Because, I mean, you were out there trying to help out your fellow Americans who you thought would need some help on a day like that. And the next thing you know, you turned around and, oh, wait a minute, it's me that's having the good day.
Yeah, I never felt like I was having a great day. Early on, it was, you know, what's smart for your career? How is this going to affect the next race and recovery? And I don't feel like I have it today. Maybe I just save it for the next go around. And you still have to get back home, you know?
Point-to-point course,
Point to point. And so I'm, you know, in the early miles, it was like maybe I step off, but how long is it going to take to get back home? And I just kind of stayed in it. At a certain point, I believe it was mile 17 or 18, just before the fire station, I looked back and realized I had pulled away from a lot of people, and that was the mental shift where I was like, okay, I don't feel great, but everyone else is clearly feeling worse. I got to get home, and this is probably the fastest way at this point. And, you know, at that point I was in, I think, third place, and I thought, well, this is not such a bad day after all. So it was a mindset shift, and from there it was like compete, and you know, I've been doing that my whole life, so I know how to race, and I know that course, and so everything changed from around mile 17 or 18 on.
Were the crowd? I mean, I'm not sure, but I think the crowds, from my standpoint, were not as big, obviously, in the past. We had good TV audiences, everyone inside watching it because it was such a miserable day. But were people telling you? Could you see? It's a straight shot up Commonwealth Avenue. Did you know who was in front of you? How did you assess the gap? How did you draw them back?
Yeah, I think for me it was even, you know, at a certain point I was still considering just dropping out, and the Molly Huddle was on the front of that group trying to close the gap to Mamitu Daska, and I thought that's just the wrong place to be if you think you have a chance. And so it's like, I'm going to go and run in front of Molly and pull the leader back in and give these guys a chance to really race for the win. And as I was doing that, I looked back and I had gapped everybody, and I thought, well, no, I'm in the wrong spot. I need to catch her so that we can work together. But it was a part in the race where if they didn't close the gap, she was going to run away with it. So it was more tactical for the group. Like, we need to work together and close this gap if we're going to have a shot. Otherwise, she's just going to, you know, do a victory lap into Boston here. So the timing was right. You know, that was about a 30 or 40 second gap at that point, and we just slowly chipped away at it.
What's the message? What's the message in all this? Because your first marathon was a 2:44, I believe. I mean, which is an excellent time, but it's not a world-class time. and you weren't getting a lot of big offers. I mean, you were like what, third or fourth in the Pac-10 cross countries or some such when you were at Arizona State, but you weren't the top runner on your team. You were a two-time All-American, and you were really good at the CIF, was the California Federation meet. You didn't ever win a state title in California. I'm saying all this bad stuff, but that's not bad stuff at all. But the point is,
do that intro again.
Yeah, exactly. The point is that you just kept knocking on the door. Got second place in Boston. You've been second in Chicago. Did you ever get down on yourself, or did you just say it's right there? Just keep knocking on the door, and one day it's going to kick open?
Yeah, I think consistency in our sport is huge, and so it got a little frustrating last year where it's like, well, I've been second, I've been fourth, I've been top 5 100 times. You know, I'm right there. Maybe I'm just not good enough. And prior to, it was like, okay, I've been right there. I can have a breakthrough. I'm right there. I can have a breakthrough. And then after last year's Boston, I feel like it kind of came to a head where I had this moment. It was like, maybe I've missed my opportunity. Maybe I'm on the other side, and the age thing, and you know, maybe this is as good as I am. And I think I stepped away from the sport for a little bit, and just kind of made sure I wanted to do it, made sure I loved it, made sure I still was invested in it. And then, you know, I skipped a fall marathon last year to refocus, and then came back this year and thought, all right, I'm going to take another crack at it. But I think, you know, being really patient is super important. Being consistent is super important. I've always given myself a chance. You know, I've run with the best people. This was my first major win in anything in the sport, but I always stack up against the greatest competition. You know, I hadn't won a marathon prior, but I've only raced Abbott World Marathon Majors, which are the biggest marathons, and Olympic trials and the Olympic Games. And so I wasn't quite ready to back down and settle on a smaller win. But I kind of had the rally cry of keep showing up. And that was my thing this whole segment. Don't give up on yourself just yet. Show up today, show up tomorrow, do what you always have done. And keep showing up, because you don't have a chance if you bag it in and just, you know, step away from the sport. But show up and try one more time. So consistency was everything.
But these lessons it makes no difference to your quality of talent. I mean, for all of us who used to run, no matter what your speed, the lessons are universal in running, from the top people all the way down to the back of the pack. What I do today has no value outside the context of what I did yesterday, what I must do again tomorrow, that continuity of the thing. And don't give up on yourself. Talk about not doing a fall marathon. For the last 2 years, Roger Federer in tennis has skipped the French in the spring in order to gather himself for the Wimbledon. And it's worked, and he's won the thing. How important was it for you to sort of get off the train for a little bit, refresh yourself physically and psychologically, and bring all of that, you know, refreshed Des to the starting line at Boston?
Yeah, I think the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games are just really exhausting in a way that you don't necessarily realize in the moment. You just put so much emotional energy into it, and then you make the team, and it's not like you get to sit back and relax and celebrate. You got to get ready for the Olympics, and that's even bigger. And you know, you put everything into that, and whether you medal, win, or fall short of your goals, it's sort of like waiting 4 years for Christmas, and you're like, cool, I got the bike, and then the next day you're like, I got to wait another 4 years for Christmas. It's just emotionally pretty hard, mentally pretty hard to kind of regroup from. And I don't think I really built that into my next plan, because it was like, what's the next thing that's going to get me really excited? Oh, Boston. And so I went, you know, into Boston 2017 swinging for the fences, and I put it out there like, I'm trying to win here. That's the goal. Anything else, you know, is not a great day for me. Obviously came up short. And so after that, it was when I really processed all the energy I had put into the last 3 big marathons, and I needed to hit reset. Physically, I was okay. It wasn't that. It was just, do I want to keep doing this? Has this become a job? Is this work, or do I love what I'm doing? Can I get out the door every day and really enjoy running. So I took last fall to kind of re-fall in love with the sport. If I didn't feel like doing it, I didn't force it, but I got to the point where I started to miss running, and then I got to the point where I enjoyed going out for a few miles and sweating, and then I lost a few pounds while running because I had gained some weight during that off time, and it was like, ooh, like I fit into my skinny jeans again. That's sweet. I started to realize how special it was whether I was competing or not. I'll be a lifelong runner because I just love that process. And then as I got into it more and more, I started gaining some momentum, and that just, refound the enthusiasm to really train hard and go after and tackle a big race like Boston.
So you win Boston, and then all of a sudden the phone starts to ring, your emails are packed, your agent Josh Cox is getting called by everyone. So you have to get on that the victory train now. So how long did that last? I mean, that's a lot of fun. You've been waiting to say yes your whole life, and all of a sudden I can say yes. But at some point you got to say no. Take us through that process, because that's not easy to do either.
Yeah, it's such a balance. I mean, I love competing, I love racing, and I'm a runner. That's my job, and it's pretty. You spend a lot of time with yourself, and so it's a whole different world that comes in. And you visualize winning Boston your entire life, and then you cross the line, and it's something you could never prepare for. All the things that come after, but it's really great, fun stuff, and I think our sport deserves to be celebrated, and it was a really big spotlight, and I wanted running to be talked about in new outlets as long as I could get it out there. So we said yes to as much as possible, and that was things like the Billboard Music Awards, where I never thought you would see a professional runner giving out an award. Just opportunities like that. The Celtics game, where they're honoring me at halftime on the court, and so you want to do as much as possible, but it's also a totally different world than heading out on the dirt road and running a couple miles and enjoying solitude and silence. And so we put a hard stop on all the fun, outgoing stuff. Right up to, I believe, the BAA 10K was the last real victory lap thing I did. And then I signed up for the New York City Marathon this fall. Anybody running that one? So training started a couple weeks ago for that. I'm in the 100-mile weeks right now, and I had the opportunity to come and run this as part of that build-up, and have one more kind of victory lap here in Falmouth with people from Massachusetts who can really celebrate my victory, but also get that, I do need to train. So they're very generous about bringing me in, and I'm excited to just mix it up with the mass participants, high-five some of you guys, help you reach your goals, while also going and getting my training run in for the day. So it's been a very delicate balance.
Des, I know that old friend of ours, Greg Meyer, won the 1983 Boston Marathon. He's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was living in Boston at the time. He said, I went back home, and even my closest friends started looking at me differently. And I said, wait a minute, I'm still me, I'm still Greg. Did you get any of that? You win the Boston Marathon, you're on national television. You become like capital D, capital L, Des Linden, not just Des, the girl next door. Did you sense a difference in how people approached you after that victory, when it was so celebrated?
It's a good question. Not really. I feel like the real close-knit people in my life still rib me and give me a hard time, and they're the first ones to be like, make the joke that you've changed. Oh, you're flying all over. What's next? Where are you going? Or what do you think you're going to be, a Diamond Delta mileage? Like that is enough for them to poke fun at me. Like, oh, I see you getting in first class. You've changed, as. No, I think the people around me that are the closest still treat me the same, and I think that's why things have stayed fairly normal.
What's the coolest thing that's happened since you won Boston? I mean, you had the Billboard thing, but of all the people you've met or the things you've had an opportunity to do, which is the one for you that's kind of stood out and say, well, that was really cool?
Yeah, I would have to say going away the Celtics game, because it's just this really tight, packed arena, and it's, you know, it's filled with runners who happen to be in town from the marathon. It's filled with Bostonians who, you know, understand the bigness of that race, and they cheered so loud. Like, it was a really special moment.
Yeah, that's a great thing that John Hancock does, is bring champions to the center court. You look at all these basketball players, and when you see them all together, the point guards just look like little teeny people. And then also you stand next to them and you say, oh my God, even the smallest guys are giants. So did you stand next to some of these guys who were like 7 feet tall?
No, I stayed a little further away just so that you couldn't quite see that.
So tell me about what else you do besides running. I mean, you're famous for your like your aficionado of whiskey. Now, you would think that whiskey and running don't go together, but you tell us how they do.
They don't. They don't go together at all. You should not whiskey and then run. You should run, do your running.
Run, then whiskey.
And then turn that off and then be a whiskey aficionado later. One of the craziest things from Boston was the gifts that came in. And a lot of people are really latched onto the whiskey thing, and so I have bottles of bourbon and whiskey coming in from all over. So if I never run a great race again, it's on you guys. Thanks for the gifts, and you got to give the fans what they want, but that wasn't helping. No, it was actually really cool, and I think that moderation is key with everything. So obviously, you know, celebrate with whiskey in moderation, and it's really a social thing. Like, let's get together, sample, and taste these things, and it's a good counter, you know, downtime activity.
You're not the only one now. The day after the Boston Marathon, traditionally, back when Bill Rogers had his store down in Faneuil Hall, Bill's older brother Charlie was an aficionado. And the Tuesday after the Boston Marathon on Monday was International Drinking Day at the Bill Rogers Running Center. Bill was usually in the store signing autographs all day. And all like some Kenyan runners and Russian runners, people from all over the world who run the marathon and were friends with Charlie or Bill would come by the store. And every like an hour, we'd go back in Charlie's office and have a wee dram. And Charlie would give us an education on whatever liquor, whatever single malt we were doing at the time.
I love it.
It's pretty funny. So anyway, so what else do you do to keep, because running is such an obsessive sport, right? It is easy to get so locked into the thing that you sort of put, you know, blinders on everything else. You and your husband, Ryan, what do you do to get away from that so that you're not so totally wrapped up in it that you say that it becomes a job and not something you love? How do you balance that life out?
Yeah, I mean, it's always picking activities that aren't going to injure you. So you actually literally have to think about that. Ryan's really into skiing. I'm like, let's not do that. He's really into water skiing. I'm like, let's not do that. So I end up sitting on a lot of boats watching him water ski. That doesn't suck. I'm a big reader. Anybody are big readers? Yeah. Some really good books out right now from some great runners, especially on the women's side. I recommend checking out Shalane's new cookbook. It actually has some great stuff in there. Kara just put a book out. And Dina's Let Your Mind Run is fantastic. It's just a really great thing to read on the running side. And then we're big coffee people too. So any coffee fans? Yes. Yeah, so we just started a little coffee company with the Trues up in New Hampshire, Linden and True Coffee, and we're learning all about roasting and cupping and tasting, and maybe taking a little of the whiskey knowledge and putting it something a little more productive.
Well, how did you get involved in that? I mean, Ben True, of course, is a native Maine runner who now lives in New Hampshire, one of the great 5,000-meter runners in the U.S. right now. Well, how'd you get involved in that with Ben, but just the idea of trying to, because coffee's a tough business. I've been to Ethiopia a bunch of times, and a couple of friends of mine who were former distance runners got into the coffee business. Ethiopia, a big coffee producing nation. And it takes a long time for the coffee world to sort of mature.
Yeah, it's we'll see if we last. We'll see how long we last, but we're having a great time right now. And Ryan and social media is crazy, but Ryan and Ben became social media friends, which is super weird. And they would talk all the time. They're into a lot of the same stuff, coffee and hunting and running. And so they were chatting back and forth, and Ben got his roaster. He's talking to Ryan about it. Ryan's like, hey, I need a roaster. I'm like, I'm gonna take your Instagram away. You don't need anything. But he got a roaster, And then, they just were profiling beans and roasting and learning about it, and they decided maybe 2 months before Boston, we should start a company and just see if people are interested in Boston, go out, take some samples, get some feelers, and it was well received.
No, so where does it stand right now? Is this like the microbrewery world where you can make beer at home, you can obviously make coffee at home? Is this something that is building across the country?
It seems to be, and we might have missed the biggest window. I think that coffee specialty is grown quite a bit, and there's a lot of people trying to jump in that maybe just tag specialty on their bag, but it's not quite, that planned out and researched and studied. These guys are reading the books, they're doing their homework, they're trying to find the best beans in the world. And I think one of the cool things about us is that we're always trying to be a little bit better, and we learned that from athletics, and it's so obvious that those two have taken it right into the coffee world. It's like they'll read a book and pick each other's brains and try to get one roast, just a minute point better, and you can taste it in the results. So it's kind of fun to watch them take the athletic side and put it into something totally different.
And how do the people are looking to find your company? What's it called? What's the, your website, et cetera?
Yeah, we are Linden and True Coffee, and you can find us at coffeebylt.com, and then we're also on social media. And reach out to Ben, myself, Sarah True, or Ryan, and that's a great way too. It's fun because it's so small that we can really interact with our customers. We have a great founders program that's sold out, but we get on video chats with them every month and just kind of, talk about what's going on with coffee, talk about what's going on with our lives. So it's a nice intimate look into the whole thing, but we're really engaging with everyone. So it's a pro tip if you want to, get a direct message from an Olympian or an elite, just go to the coffee route and someone will respond to you.
And True is spelled True, just like the word true. Des, for years, when you first became a professional, you signed on with the Hanson Brooks Distance Project up in Rochester Hills, Michigan, outside Detroit. And for those of you who don't know, these two brothers, Keith and Kevin Hanson, had 4 running shops outside in the suburbs of Detroit. And at the 2007 Olympic trials for men in New York City, 10% of that field and Brian Sell, who made the team, were put there by the Hanson's Project. And I'm saying, you have 2 brothers with 4 stores in suburban Detroit could put 10% of the field together. What the hell's going on with USA Track and Field? It ought to be an embarrassment, just 2 guys doing it. Well, after all that time now, what's it been, 10 years or so you were with Hanson's, and now you on your own. You're still running for Brooks, but where are you in your process of you're on your own, you're going to sign with someone? Where do you stand professionally?
Yeah, I'm still with Brooks right now, and I had 13 great years with the brothers, and it's a development program, and they take young kids and they, try to give them a chance to get better, and we get a lot of young kids every year, 22, 23, and they try to stay in it as long as they can. They learn a lot from the older people, and it was great to be a part of the team, but it's based in Rochester Hills, and my husband and I have found ourselves in the northern part of Michigan, in Charlevoix and Traverse City, quite often. And so we're spending a lot of time up there, and it felt wrong to call myself a part of the team when I'm living here and they're down there. So I felt like I had done everything I could with this group. I, developed as an individual. I helped a lot of teammates, and then I won Boston. And, I don't know what else I can contribute to the group, but living somewhere else and saying I'm a part of a group, I felt like could really take away. Are you a good teammate? What kind of example are you giving? And so I felt like it was best to, start my own thing up in this northern region of Michigan. And so I am running just by myself right now. I'm actually being coached by my college coach, Walt Drenth, who lives in Charlevoix. And I think we both kind of, to be determined, but see ourselves living in that area for a long time and maybe wanting to showcase that area and bring young runners and start something in the future on our own. So that's to be determined, but
If you people have never been to Charlevoix, Michigan, it reminds me a little of Cape Cod in many ways.
Very much so.
It's right on Lake Michigan. I got a friend of mine that has a summer place up there, so I've been up there a number of times. And anyway, they're really nice running community up there as well. But talk about running on your own, and yet what we found in the last maybe half decade or decade, it's been the reemergence of the running groups. Zap Fitness and the Oregon Track Club and Bowerman Track Club. It's been the, bringing people together to train, which is really the Kenyan and Ethiopian model. And it used to be the American model, the Greater Boston Track Club, Colorado Track Club, Florida Track Club, Chicago Track Club, Club Northwest. Now you're back running on your own. Is that something you're used to doing? And Ryan Hall did that, I know, up in Mammoth Lakes. That there's a fine line. You get a lot of benefit running with people, and yet you're living by yourself. Talk about that as far as from trying to reach your best and maintain that high peak that you're at, running on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I think the groups are fantastic, and if you need motivation to get out the door every day, if you need people to push you in workouts, it's a great way to do it. And we're seeing, success breeds success. I think for me at this point, we got a lot of younger kids in the Hanson's team, and so I was starting to do more on my own anyhow, and I got pretty used to that. And I can go out, I don't need motivation, I can go out and motivate myself to do the runs and to put in the work. There is the point where you want someone to push you in workouts, and if you have a group, it makes it a little bit easier. I have these really great guys around that I can kick their butt and motivate myself from that. And sometimes Ryan will hop into some of my workouts on fresh legs, and he'll kick me around a little bit. So there's certainly people that you can find. If on the female side, it's a lot easier. If you're at a high level, you can find a couple of men to jump in workouts and push you. So I don't see that being a problem for me, and I do still think I'll be able to benefit from the groups having people have success. We compete against them all the time, and I think the U.S. championship system does a lot. We race against the same people, and you see how you stack up, and there's just a lot of opportunities to match up with great people. And if you can do that in race after race, and you see those same people have a breakthrough, it's kind of the same mentality where it's like, okay, I race with them all the time, I can compete with them, why can't I have that same success? So I think the groups are creating a ton of depth, and I think that'll continue to grow. For right now, we'll train on my own, but I wouldn't mind some people moving up to Charlevoix in a couple of years here and starting our own group in that area.
Talk about how a California girl from Chula Vista ends up in Michigan and sort of embracing it. I mean, do you ever go back to California?
I don't. I can't because I'll never leave. Like, what was I thinking?
No, it's hot now. It's hot. It's unbelievable.
Okay,
Last
good.
3 summers, 85% of the houses in San Diego do not have air conditioning. We need air conditioning finally. For the last 3 summers, it's been brutal.
Yeah, that's good to know. Downplay it. Tell me that in the winter. No, I mean, I loved being at home. I went to school at Arizona State and then moved out to Michigan right out of college. And I like to say that I'm ready for any weather condition. So I got that going for me. But I mean, I think, the northern part of Michigan's beautiful, and we have a great summer. And then, in all honesty, you guys, people say, oh, she's tough. She trains in the Michigan winters. I leave. I go somewhere else. I went out to Phoenix last year and trained there for 2 months, and it's pretty perfect for training conditions. So.
Bill Rogers used to do that before. Phoenix, it doesn't have altitude, but it's like these crystalline mornings. I mean, not in the summertime where it's 120, but in the wintertime, just beautiful. I mean, 50 degrees and crisp as can be. You can run forever.
Yeah, it's those days where you're like, I wish my run were longer. This is perfect running weather. And then it's every single day.
All right, kids, I've just been given the time. It's flashing, so I know you guys want to get some more autographs and pictures with Des, and she's going to be out there. What pace are you going to be? What are you going to be doing on Sunday morning? What pace?
Probably 7 minutes to 7:30.
So
anybody?
7 minute to 7:30 types. Get yourself out there, just around 50 minutes or so, and hopefully the weather will be conducive. You'll have fun. You'll have fun. Let's thank Des. Wish her all the best rest of the summer and on to New York City. Thanks, Des.
Thank you.